when you have faced the issues of life and your identity has been affected, there will be a discontentment. There will be an inner emptiness that you will feel because you're simply not able to pour out what is inside because you have lost your self-image. You have lost your identity. When that happens, we will respond in several ways in an attempt to answer to that inner emptiness. How do you know that this is how you're responding? My name is Coach Judy Mzungu Jabali. My assignment is to guide you towards healing, finding your identity, and rediscovering the path to your purpose. So how do people typically respond when they have been wounded, when they have lost their identity, when they are struggling with something inside? For some people, they will seek to feed their spirit. Now, in the search for trying to, answer to the spirit, the thing that is within their spirit that is searching, because your identity is ideally in your spirit. That's why you will find that actually many people, especially in Africa, will tend to move towards religious fanaticism. And that's where cults have taken advantage. That's where, we have had all these, people taking advantage of in terms of teaching and doctrine. Why? Because in the quest for someone to be able to answer to the questions of the inner frustration, the lack of identity, they will tend to feed their spirit. And truly, that's why church has a place. That's why religion has a place. That's why your relationship with God has a place. Because when you're able to feed your spirit through a proper relationship with God, that's when you will be able to truly understand who you are, what is in your identity. But if that is the only thing that you're going to search for, still, there will be discrepancies. Still, there'll be deficiencies. So what do many people do in their search for identity? They will go to church. They will feed the spirit. They will spend a lot of time in prayer, in fasting, in going to, all these prayer meetings. Is there anything necessarily wrong with it? No. But that is a desire to answer to the need to understand what is my identity. Now, for some other people, even in this search for, because your identity is in your spirit, in this search for that spiritual high, or that high that can only be answered through a relationship with God, some people will search for the high in alcohol. Some people will search for the high in drugs. And that's why now we know that in this generation, we are having a lot of, and even in the generations past, struggled with alcoholism, struggled with drug addiction, is because someone is fighting to fill the inner emptiness, to fill the void that is inside. Only they are trying to fill them on the basis of what is external. So they reach out for the alcohol. They reach out for the drugs. That is one way that we try to cover up in the search for identity. Another way that many people some people try to search for, the inner void, or to fill the inner void, is serial relationships. You're trying to fill that emotional space by getting into one relationship. It gives you a high for a while. Then it comes to an end after the high ends, because truly there is no relationship that can give you that high throughout. You're trying to cover up for the thing that can only come internally by attaching to a person. So one relationship ends, but you have no capacity to be alone. because you don't have a sense of identity. So what happens? You get into another relationship. After a short while, the energy or the high comes to an end. That beautiful romantic feeling comes to an end. You stop that relationship, quickly get into another. Serial dating. It's because someone has no sense of identity. Now that's where you can even find these issues of sex addiction. Or someone simply getting into a relationship, getting involved sexually with another person. Quickly, they move on to the high body count. It's not because you're necessarily beautiful or handsome for that matter. It's because you are trying to answer to something happened somewhere along the way. You lost your identity. You're trying to find it externally. What is the other way that people try to answer to that issue of lack of image? They begin to seek external validation from things. So what happens? As they're seeking for external validation from things, they'll seek acquiring things. Whether it's a good phone, sometimes way beyond your means. Sometimes it's to live in a certain address because that's where what your identity is coming from. Sometimes it could be your job. Sometimes it could be your marriage. Sometimes it could be children. Is there anything necessarily wrong with these things? No. But if that's where your identity is going to come from, should your spouse do something wrong, you're gone. Should you lose that job, you're gone. Should your children do something wrong, you're gone. Your whole identity is coming from external things. What is the other way that people respond when their sense of identity has been messed up? They start things and cannot finish. So they're forever on one project after another, one project after another. Why? The inner motivation that is required to sustain and carry a project to the end is missing. Their willpower is gone. So they seem busy, but they're not achieving much because the lack of identity and the poor self-image does not sustain them enough to push their will, to push their willpower, to be able to sustain in and out of season until something is accomplished. All that is as a result of lack of identity. Another thing that happens when someone is suffering lack of identity is that they'll seek external feel-good factors. If it's a lady, shopping. And it seems therapeutic, but it's because you're answering to something that is within, that is can only be answered within. You're trying to cover it up with shopping. If it's a man, maybe you're buying the next big car. Is a car bad? No. But if you're using it to be able to justify who you are, then there is a problem. Because after you get the car, then what? Maybe for the younger generation, it could be a mobile phone. For those people who can afford, it could be the going to the spa. Is going to the spa wrong? No. But if you're using it to be able to just ease the pain that is inside and not be able to deal with it, then there's a problem because you're trying to look for your identity on the basis of what's inside, on the basis of what's outside. Whereas your identity should ideally come from within. In the next video, I'll talk about how do you actually find your identity. My name is Coach Judy Mzungu Jabali, and my assignment is to guide you towards healing, finding your identity, and rediscovering the path to your purpose. See you next time as I guide you towards finding your identity.